Hey everyone, it's Bob Pulver from Elevate Your AIQ. We are still here at HR Tech 2025, and today I have the pleasure of talking to Ilan Frank from Checkr. How you doing today, Ilan?
Great. Nice to see you, Bob.
Likewise, likewise. So it's uh it's an interesting event to see the progress that we're making towards a lot of the AI advancements that everyone is sort of either bolting on or claiming is AI native,
Yep.
capabilities and things like that, and one of the things I talk about a lot is responsible innovation.
Mm-hmm.
The ability for um, all talent and all companies to both protect themselves against risks,
Right.
mitigate bias, adverse impact, candidate fraud, which I know we're going to talk about, as well as go on offense. And how do we use this to fuel growth, and how do we
Right.
use this in a constructive, strategic way to think differently about how work actually gets done within an organization. So, anyway, so we'll dig into some of those things, but I thought we could just kick things off with you, just giving a little bit about your background and your role at Checkr.
Yeah, happy to. So as you said, my name's Ilan Frank. I've been at Checkr for 18 months. I'm Chief Product Officer there. My background is in product. I've done enterprise product, and most of that has actually been in more on the productivity space. So tools
Okay.
that people use, to become more productive at work. I was at Slack for many years, and Airtable, and a long time ago, Portals, back when people were doing that,
Okay.
if you remember that. But now here, leading a product at Checkr, it's been really, really fascinating because it's a very regulated space,
Yep.
which is a fun place and an interesting place to use AI and innovation. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'll
Yeah.
stop there with the introduction.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe you could just put things into perspective in terms of like products, like design and philosophy and things that you learned in some of your previous roles, and how you're
Mhm.
sort of bringing that to Checkr, and the things that I guess I'm curious, just with your product mindset, how you sort of go into a new team and approach the approach you take to user experience and
Yeah.
functionality and things like that.
Yeah. So that's one of the nice things about my background in productivity and productivity tools. You live and die based on the usefulness of your tool. If people
Right.
aren't getting benefit from it, the users that actually use
Yeah.
it day to day, if they're not getting benefit from it, the company stops adopting your tools. And so that's been ingrained in me for many, many years, the last
Yeah.
2 decades.
No doubt.
And you can't take that out of me, I guess.
Right.
So I'm not going to design software that's, bad and a poor user experience.
Okay.
And even if in background checks, we do have, of course, the candidates.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important for the thousands or millions of candidates that we serve to have a great experience. But even for the few folks at the company who use background check software and do the screenings and the adjudication and all that, the reviews, I think there's no reason not to spend an extra, cycle or two on development
Yeah.
and make that experience delightful. So that's one of the things that word is a word that we use often actually at
Okay.
Checkr when we think about interfaces.
Interesting. Okay, nice. So the maybe we could just give folks just a sense of the coverage when it comes to fraud detection, prevention,
Yep.
and the scope of the platform.
Yeah. So fraud, first of all, a hot topic, over the last year or two, but also downstairs at the show. Um, we focus right now on fraud within the background check process, and about to get into some of that with the I-9, the post-hire process. We do intend to, broaden that and continue to go through the entire hiring process, because if the solution doesn't actually go from the beginning, from when you meet the candidate until the end, it's like Swiss cheese. You've got to cover the entire block,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So we are definitely looking at the whole thing. And one of the things that Checkr brings to that problem, is our knowledge of the candidate.
Yeah.
We have very, very deep knowledge because of the data that we collect. And because of that, we have a lot of signals that we can use to detect, identity fraud,
Yeah.
and other sorts of fraud like that.
Okay. So for that piece specifically, like the identity fraud, is that something that's inherent to your platform, or would you partner with like a ID.me kind of company, or how does that?
We are open to all.
Yeah.
So we have right now already a partnership in place.
Okay.
We also are building inside data signals where we have a machine learning team that's
Okay.
looking at the data that we have
Okay.
to detect data signals basically that we can use and surface in
Yeah.
a fraud detection algorithm. We are open to all.
Okay.
I think that as an industry, let's take a step back from Checkr for a
Sure.
second. I think it'll take a holistic approach. I don't think there's going to
Yeah.
be one vendor that's just going to solve fraud for HR.
Yeah.
It's going to take an ecosystem basically working together. I don't know if that means new protocols. I don't know if that means new consortiums, but I think that it's going to take more than just a vendor coming out and saying, we have solved, fraud end to end.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
definitely want to be a leader in that space, so for
yeah.
sure.
I agree with you. I do think this needs a comprehensive, blanket kind of approach.
Yeah,
And so that means, um, having that continuity of the data as it may traverse, these different systems, but also just thinking about the full, talent life cycle.
right.
When you start talking about, agentic AI and all these systems like sort of autonomously passing data back and forth, you really need to buckle that
Yeah,
all down and make sure you've got a comprehensive approach. So I think what you
great.
describe is sort of mirrors what I see in the sort of responsible AI space, right? You don't know where that weak link in the chain, might be, and so we all have a role to play in
Right.
being responsible in that way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
And that's I think that's responsible for, both on the, by the way, on the candidate side and on the customer side,
yeah,
right? Some of the research that you indicated early on, we looked at both sides. We interviewed 3,000 customers that recently hired and 3,000 candidates that were recently hired and really asked
good.
them questions there. And both have their reasons for concern, right? On the candidate, we don't often think about the candidate, but
Yeah,
the candidates are concerned about PII leakage
uh,
or sharing information with their information without their consent, with foundational models for learning and things like that. The customer of course has fraud in mind and
yeah,
identity and recruiter fraud and all that. So there's two sides I think to this. And I think at the end what's interesting about this research and the way I look at it is at the end of the day it's about trust.
yeah,
And if AI can help secure and build that trust, I think we're in the right direction. If it's tearing that trust down, then we're going in the wrong direction. If you're talking about, responsible AI.
yeah. And I think that's exactly why this is such a pivotal time to get people. I mentioned like AI literacy and readiness
Yeah.
before, and I just feel like this is everyone's responsibility. I feel like the organizations have a responsibility to have some at least foundational training and then get into role specific training. Not everyone needs to know about every single potential risk necessarily, but where it's relevant to your role and the way that you're treating that candidate data,
Hmm.
I think that we've really got to make sure that people are not just inherently and automatically trusting some of these systems, using the right trusted data and understanding exactly what are the things I need to be looking out
Yeah.
for. So regarding that research that you guys recently published, were there some surprises in there?
There's some things that were not surprising, which is that everyone's concerned about it. Both sides are concerned about
Yeah.
it. That's not so surprising. One thing that was surprising is that there isn't a common definition of what fraud is. I
Okay.
didn't think about that going into the research.
Okay.
But when you ask for, we listed certain things. I said, "Is this fraud? Is this,
Yeah.
And you ask that of both customers and candidates, and the only thing that they agree to is that basically like impersonating someone else, like someone
Yeah.
else basically coming in and having a fake identity. That's fraud.
Yeah.
But beyond that, if you're using AI to update your resume, is that fraud? Probably not. Most people agree that it's not.
Yeah.
If you're using AI to help answer questions during live interview, is that fraud? It's getting a little dicey, but there's not this definition of what
Yeah.
fraud is,
Yeah.
which I didn't think about that heading into the research.
Yeah. I used to have a pretty strong opinion on that. Like, I guess it sort of depends on the circumstances because I've had debates about that, live interview
Yeah,
help. I just feel like if you need an accommodation, then say so. But otherwise, really trying to have well, I guess it also depends on if you have an AI interviewer versus a
that's
human
right. If you had,
interviewer,
that's exactly it. If the
right?
company is using an AI to
Yeah.
interview you, then why are you not allowed to use AI
Yeah.
to answer questions?
Yeah. I
Um,
mean,
it's super interesting.
I try to, I'm very, I'm a very big advocate for human centricity
Yeah,
through all of this.
yeah,
And I just think if you want a successful, both sides are looking for a successful, sort of marriage
yeah,
and partnership. And I just think, um, at some point in the recruiting cycle, you've got to have a human to human conversation, and I want to understand how your human brain works. Yes, I know we will give you access to AI tools. You will use AI on the job. We
exactly
know
right.
it will augment you, but let's just
For
focus
now.
on establishing this baseline of human intellect and human creativity
Yeah,
and things like that. And so I just think we're getting close to like I don't know if I would call it fraudulent, but I feel like there's some ethical, you know,
well, 51% of customers would agree with you.
okay,
So I was surprised that it was
yeah,
only 51%,
that's
but that's how split it is, right?
interesting. Okay.
Now, what you touched upon human interaction. 75% of candidates said that they would prefer a primarily human interface from the customer side, from the
Okay.
company side, as far as the interview process. I was actually surprised by that. Who are the 25%,
Right.
that don't prefer a human interface as far
Yeah.
as the hiring side? But
Yeah.
and what's interesting is going to be to continue to do this year over year over the
Uh-huh.
next 3 years and see where that goes,
Yeah.
where that trend's going to go. This is a point in time right now, but I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it depends on which where you are in the process. Because I was telling some folks yesterday that I don't interview often, but the last time I did interview, the recruiter was definitely reading from a script,
Uh-huh. Yes.
right? And then just saying,
Yes.
thank you for that. Thank you for
Right.
that, Bob. Thank you for that. So if you're going to, you're walking yourself into the problem that you fear,
Right.
which is, a robot, some automation or AI, potentially replacing your job. If your job is robotic that way,
Right.
then, don't be shocked when someone says, the
Yeah.
team's gonna shrink or whatever. So let's make sure that humans are doing the truly, human, activities, and let's make sure that we understand how we're building effective relationships. But to your point earlier, like, yes, if you're bringing your AI, then why can't the candidate
Yeah.
bring
Exactly.
theirs? And I mean, that goes down a whole rabbit hole around like, well, if I had a digital twin, can I let my digital
Exactly.
twin do the interview?
Exactly.
And
To what point,
yeah,
when AI could actually I could feed it a little bit of my information, and then I could say, I'm going to go play golf. Like, you take this interview for me. When that happens, is that okay? Probably not, but
I think like if we had this conversation like a year ago, I would say that's like a really dystopian thing to think about. And now I'm like,
not gonna
it's just a matter of time before somebody attempts to do that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Gartner just released research that they did that predicts that 1 in 4 interviewees by 2028 will be fake. To think about that number it would be pretty crazy.
So is that something that you guys would, I mean, based on how you think about your roadmap, I mean, is that the kind of scenario that you want to try to um,
Yeah,
mitigate where
yeah,
someone,
yeah.
like,
We do want to help with that.
okay,
Again, we focus right now mostly on the fraud within just the background check process,
yeah,
right? I'm doing a background check and I'm using someone else's social security card or
okay,
driver's license or something like that. But we want to branch out from that because again, so we want to solve it holistically for companies.
yeah,
And if we solve it the background check process, great, that's awesome. But if you're feeding basically a fraudulent person where an AI agent took their interview and now you're just checking, make sure that the real person shows up to the job,
yeah,
that's not a full solution. So
right,
we want to do the whole thing.
yeah, okay, no, that's great. Um, what um, what else are you guys sort of thinking about as you look across the market, like other partnerships and yeah, I know you haven't spent a lot of time at the show here, but
Yes.
certainly curious, what else is in store for Checkr?
Beyond fraud. So I mean, I think that the other area. Let's talk about the other area where we use, and let's
Uh,
talk about AI, and
yeah.
let's talk about the area where we don't use AI.
Okay.
One of the nice things I mentioned in the beginning, interesting, problems in a regulated space. One of the, I think, nice things about this space is that there is beginning to be regulation against using AI to make hiring decisions. I
Yep.
think that's a good thing. I think that we should be careful about AI automatically saying you yes, you no.
Absolutely.
And that's a good thing. But that doesn't mean that you can't use AI in the process of, screening folks and approving them.
Of course.
And so we use a lot of AI in the data aggregation process. We get a lot of data sources, and as you can imagine, it's very messy.
Yep.
Courthouses don't all talk to each other and say, we're going to have these columns and these fields, and this is what we're going to
Yeah.
use for an ID and all that.
Sure.
So we collect all that data and we use AI machine learning to basically piece a profile of a person,
Okay.
of an actual human being, rather than a record. Um, and that I think is actually going to evolve over time and become much better. We've seen it ourselves
Mhm.
in what we've been able to do over the last 5 years. We started this before it was AI, the big brother of AI,
Yeah.
ML. And so we were doing that, and then now we're doing a little bit more AI, and it's
Okay.
it's actually really interesting what you can do now.
Yeah.
I think that I don't see necessarily a hologram of a person, but we can
Right.
create a real picture of a person and their life experiences. And I'm not talking about just criminal. I'm talking about everything from moving to universities to
Okay.
addresses to places of work to all these types of things that really kind of give a holistic picture of a person.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. I just, I guess when I talk about like AI literacy, part of it is understanding where it's appropriate to use it versus
Yeah,
where it's not. And some of that is the human centricity of it, just from a philosophical and uh, I guess an ethical, perspective, and just
right.
making fair decisions. But part of it is just to not trust it like a calculator.
Exactly.
It is a decision support tool. It is not meant for you to say that, you know, some stack rank or score
Yeah,
is sort of definitive.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
still sort of this like probabilistic kind of.
That I think that's the key word,
Yeah.
right? It's non-deterministic, and so like we can't use it for times when messing up means bad stuff
Yeah.
for people, especially, right?
Yeah.
And probably companies. But that doesn't mean that it's not that we should throw the baby out with the
Of
bathwater.
course.
There's a lot of benefit to it, and the benefit to the candidates as well. By the way, I was speaking with a customer at the show, and she was telling me that they screen a lot of candidates. They have basically manufacturing, so lots and lots of people coming in.
Yeah.
And they've started using AI for that first initial phone screen. And what they found is that they were able to actually phone screen a lot more candidates. They saw
Sure.
a candidate that whose resume they probably would have said no to and would not have phone screened. But this candidate did incredibly well with the AI interview
Okay.
initially. So I think that we're going to be giving more opportunities. We could be using AI well to give more opportunities rather than make it less fair for people to go through the hiring process.
Yeah, I think that's really important from a candidate experience perspective. I mean, you you don't have to draw some artificial line that says, "Oh, we got 1,000 applicants. There's no way we're getting through all of those.
Right.
Let's just pick the top 50 or whatever." And
Exactly.
that's a that's a sort of a very that's a dangerous sort of path to go down because you are disadvantaging people for no logical reason
I
necessarily, other
agree.
than you ran out of bandwidth. And so if it's the difference between ghosting the candidate, or just giving a flat out rejection and giving them a shot to provide that richer sort of information that goes beyond a two-dimensional resume, I think
Yeah.
that's the most. I think it's a pretty effective. So these things will get better. These AI
Yeah.
interviewers, maybe the avatar isn't that realistic. Maybe you don't
Right.
like the voice. It's a male voice versus a female. I mean, there's all
Right.
kinds of tweaks that you can make there. But I think at the end of the day, we need to give more real people a shot.
I agree completely. I
Yeah,
agree completely.
yeah. Um, Anything else that you're looking forward to beyond the?
beyond the fraud and using AI for data, I think that the other thing that will be very interesting is once employees are in the company, what
Mm.
happens? And we don't play as much in that space. We have a little bit of post-hire
Okay.
products from the Checkr side. But I think that's really important. Certainly in this show, there's a lot of companies that are dealing with HRISs that are dealing with, employee reviews and compensation and all
Yeah.
that. But I think that that's the same signal that you get from hiring to background checks, to post-hire and work, I think are very important.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is going to be if we can take some of those signals and actually, amplify them, for the next job. If you do really
Yeah.
well, for example, at your job and you're interviewing again, how do you know that, okay, well, I say I did really well, but,
Right.
you just have to trust me.
Right.
But if we can
Yeah.
amplify some of that information in a secure way, I think that would be very, very interesting.
Yeah. Another thing I was thinking about was, there's a lot of different relationships that people have with an organization these days in terms of, freelance economy, contractors. You've got contingent, labor coming through different platforms, maybe
Hmm.
even through, not even through talent acquisition, maybe it's through, fulfillment and
Right.
procurement and things like that. So, um, do companies pull you in to sort of look at not just, in the US W-2
Yeah.
employees, to look at other people to make sure you're mitigating risk across the talent
Yeah, actually,
portfolio?
Checker's background is actually started with contingent, or at least with 1099,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And the
Okay.
gig space is actually where we started in
Oh,
2015,
okay.
and then branched out from there. But absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I was just speaking with a partner in the staffing space
Okay.
that's looking to partner with us to review their workers that are basically that they manage contingent workers for other companies. So absolutely.
Okay.
And we look at the problem of staffing holistically.
Yeah.
So we're not like just these are the checks that we do. This is what we've got. We want to be we want to be the solution partner that works with customers to solve their staffing needs. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, that's great. Yeah, I mean, just tying it back to your what you mentioned earlier about your sort of philosophy around this comprehensive
Mhm.
approach, right? I mean, those you never know where that weak link
That's
might
right.
be, or where that fraud and that risk may be
That's right.
exposed. So,
That's right. And it can happen anywhere, of course. Yeah, it's really crazy. We I don't know if you saw the DOJ released a report that this is even before ChatGPT came out. This is just during COVID because of remote work.
okay.
That 300 US corporations have reported that they had basically someone working from North Korea inadvertently. They didn't mean to hire that person. They did a study on the specific incident type. I mean, that's before AI and fraud
Right.
and that kind of more sophisticated fraud.
Yeah.
So these are things that we're going to absolutely contend with.
Yeah.
No,
Really, really interesting.
yeah,
Well, you're doing important work protect the ecosystem here. So, I thank you on behalf of the entire HR tech
yeah,
ecosystem. But no, it's great. It's great to learn about this space. I mean, obviously, as an extension of the responsible AI work that I do, it's important for me to have a broader understanding about the threat landscape and where fraud and risk can surface end to end, from application to applicant to alumni, as I like to think about the full life cycle of talent. So yeah, so it's great to learn what you're doing.
it
And
was great to talk to you as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
awesome. All right, well, thank you again, Alon, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you
pleasure.
next time. Bye bye.